I'm Camille Harper, 32 years old. I've built a successful career in finance, managed million-dollar portfolios, and advised CEOs. But the one man I could never impress? My father. Every year, the Harper family reunion brought everyone home to Charleston. And every year, I dreaded it. This time was different. Or at least, I thought it would be. I had bought him a brand new Mercedes S-Class as a Father's Day gift. A peace offering. A symbol of everything I'd accomplished without him. I thought maybe, just maybe, this would be the year he'd finally look at me and say, "I'm proud of you." What I didn't know was that a single folded piece of paper in my purse would unravel everything I thought I knew about my family. By the end of that night, I would understand exactly why my father never loved me, and it had nothing to do with my career or the car. Before I get into it, let me ask, have you ever spent your whole life trying to earn someone's love who never intended to give it to you? If so, keep reading. This is my story, but it might be yours, too. I grew up in the manicured shadows of Charleston's historic district. White columns, ivy-covered porches, afternoon tea with names that wore pearls and secrets. To the outside world, the Harpers were the kind of Southern family people envied. But inside our home, things were cold. My father, Charles Harper, was a self-made man, or so he liked to remind us. He built Harper and Company from the ground up, turning a handful of dilapidated properties into a multi-million-dollar real estate empire that to the world. He was impressive. To us, he was iron. Success wasn't just his priority, it was his religion. And in his version of the gospel, emotions were weak, praise was poison, and children were projects meant to reflect their maker's perfection. He never went to school plays. He never asked about our day. But he always noticed if your shoes weren't polished or your GPA dropped by 1/10 of a point. My mother, Lorraine, was the opposite. Gentle. Soft-spoken. But only when he wasn't in the room. In his presence, she shrank, like a candle in a hurricane. She smiled only when he did. She agreed with him before he finished a sentence. And she never, ever defended us. That was the first betrayal I learned to live with. I was the middle child. Always too loud, too opinionated, too ambitious for my father's taste. My older sister, Vanessa, was the golden one, 3 years my senior, homecoming queen, straight-A student, Harvard grad, and now, a partner at Dad's firm. Vanessa knew how to play the game. She could charm him without seeming fake, mirror his moods without appearing weak. He gave her the keys to the kingdom before she even knew what to do with them. My younger sister, Elise, was 2 years behind me and delicate in a way that made people instinctively protect her. She didn't chase grades or accolades. She floated. Somehow, she managed to make our father laugh, something I didn't know was physically possible until I saw it happen. She could ease the tension in a room with a single quip or a wide-eyed smile. And me, I got straight A's. I captained the debate team. I earned a full scholarship to Wharton while working 2 part-time jobs. But he barely looked up from his newspaper. The one time I brought home an award for national business leadership, he asked why I wasn't the overall winner. First place was expected. Anything less was failure. After graduation, he offered me a job at Harper and Company, half-heartedly, like he was checking a box. I declined. I couldn't stand the idea of working for a man who thought I was just a lesser version of Vanessa. Instead, I moved to New York with 2 suitcases and a mattress on a borrowed floor. I clawed my way through rejection letters and unpaid internships. Until I landed a junior analyst role at Morgan Stanley. And when he found out, all he said was, "Let's see how long that lasts." It lasted 8 years. Last month, I was promoted to senior investment strategist, the youngest in the firm's history. I bought a brownstone in Brooklyn and paid cash. And for the first time, I had money left over to make a grand gesture. I bought my father the car he once drooled over at a country club event, a black Mercedes S-Class with the premium package. It cost me nearly a year's salary. I told myself it was a gift. But deep down, I knew the truth. It was a bid for the kind of love I'd spent my whole life chasing. The Harper reunion was always held on the last Saturday of June. It doubled as a Father's Day celebration and a subtle coronation for Charles Harper, Patriarch of the Year. Again, we'd all gather at the estate in Charleston, where the magnolias bloomed like clockwork and the family crest hung above the fireplace like a reminder of who mattered most of this year. I arrived fashionably late in a champagne-colored wrap dress and low heels. My hair was straightened, my makeup flawless. I didn't just want to impress, I needed to. I handed the keys to my father in a small black box, along with the title in an envelope. His eyes narrowed as he opened it. The room fell silent. He pulled out the key fob, studied it like it was a riddle. "What's this?" he asked. "A Mercedes S-Class. I remember you said you liked it." A long pause. Then a cold smile. "Camille, what a waste of money. You should have invested it instead. Or sent it to someone who actually needed help." The words hit me harder than I expected. He turned away and waved the fob toward my sister. "Vanessa. Help me set this up with the insurance. I assume you know where she parked it?" My hand was still outstretched from giving him the box. I slowly pulled it back. "No, thank you." No smile. Not even a nod of acknowledgement, but that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was watching him unwrap a tie from Elise 5 minutes later and beam like a proud lion. He hugged her. He called her my baby girl. She beamed, and the room lit up around them. I sat there frozen, heat rising in my chest, but I didn't say anything. Not yet. Dinner was served in the sunroom. Linen tablecloths, silver cutlery. A catered menu that probably cost more than most people's rent. Everyone laughed, passed plates, exchanged real estate war stories and golf tournament gossip. I sipped wine and tried to keep my hands from shaking. That's when I remembered the envelope, not the one with the car keys, the other one. The one in my purse that I had tucked away earlier that week, unsure of what to do with it. It had come from my father's lawyer. Accidentally sent to me instead of Vanessa. Inside were documents for a trust. A large one. Multi-million-dollar assets, property deeds, offshore accounts. I wasn't shocked by the wealth, I was shocked by the names. Vanessa Harper, beneficiary. Elise Harper, beneficiary. Camille Harper, not listed, not even a mention. I sat at that dinner table, heart pounding. That envelope burned in my bag like it was radioactive. He hadn't just ignored me, he'd erased me. When dessert was served, I stood up. "Dad," I said. My voice was steady. Clear. "Can I say something?" Everyone turned. He raised an eyebrow. "This isn't the time for speeches, Camille." I won't be long. I reached into my purse and laid the trust documents in front of him. "Wrong envelope got sent to me," I said quietly. "Just wanted to return it to its rightful owner." He froze. Vanessa's face drained of color. Elise looked down at her lap. "What is this?" My father asked. "You know what it is. You've made it clear who matters to you. I just didn't realize you were so organized about it." Silence. "You know, I bought that car because I thought maybe, just once, I'd done something you could be proud of. But now I see, it was never about me. It never would be." I picked up my wine glass. "To the Harper legacy," I said, voice calm. "Built on silence, favoritism, and selective love." And then I left. It's been 6 months since that dinner. I haven't spoken to my father. The car? He returned it. Had his assistant mail me a check. I donated the entire amount to a nonprofit that mentors young women in finance. Women who, like me, don't come from connections or favoritism. Women who have to prove their worth 10 times over just to be noticed. Vanessa emailed once, saying she hoped I wasn't making a scene out of hurt feelings. I didn't reply. Elise texted me on my birthday. I told her I needed space and me, I'm doing just fine. My story didn't end that night. It began, because walking away wasn't the end of my family. It was the beginning of my freedom, and maybe someone reading this needs to hear that your worth isn't tied to anyone else's inability to recognize it. You are not a second-place version of someone else, you don't need their permission to feel proud of yourself, and sometimes, the most powerful love you can give is the kind you give to yourself, unconditionally. The car keys were wrapped in a crisp black box with a silver bow, tucked neatly into my purse. I rehearsed how I'd hand them over, maybe after dinner, when everyone had a glass of wine and was in a good mood. I imagined the surprise on his face, the rare but genuine smile he used to show James when he'd scored a touchdown or closed a business deal. Maybe this time, that smile would be for me. As I pulled into the driveway of the Matthews estate, my heart thudded harder than it should have. The house was exactly as I remembered, grand, manicured, cold. The family had already gathered on the back patio, drinks in hand, laughter floating through the air like a language I never fully learned. James was there, of course, in his element. Tan, relaxed, still somehow managing to look like he'd just stepped out of a Brooks Brothers ad. Sophia waved at me gently, with that apologetic smile she always wore around me, half compassion, half complicity. "Lena," she called, crossing over to kiss me on the cheek. "You look amazing. New promotion glow?" I smiled tightly. "Something like that." We chatted briefly, mostly small talk, laced with compliments that felt both sincere and rehearsed. She glanced at my purse more than once. "Is that what I think it is?" she asked softly, nodding toward the box. "Yeah," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Mercedes S-Class. Top of the line." I thought it might, I don't know, mean something. Sophia's expression faltered just a second. "You know how he is, Lena. But, maybe this time. Maybe." That word rang with all the false hope I had swallowed for 32 years. Dinner was served inside the formal dining room, a room that always felt too large for any warmth to settle in. We sat at the long table, as we always had, with Father at the head, commanding attention without effort. His voice cut through conversations like a judge handing out verdicts, and tonight was no different. As the staff brought out the second course, I reached into my purse and pulled out the box. "Dad," I began, clearing my throat, "I got you something for Father's Day. It's parked in the driveway." He glanced at the box, disinterested. "Another tie?" A few chuckles. "Not mine, no," I said, standing. "It's a Mercedes. The S-Class. I remembered you once said you liked it." He raised an eyebrow. "You bought me a car?" "Yes." He opened the box, looked at the key fob, then leaned back in his chair. "That's a bit excessive, Lena." There it was, not thank you. Not even surprise. Just criticism. James whistled low. "That's got to be a year's salary, huh?" "More like 9 months, I replied, trying to keep my voice even. A Father tapped the fob on the table. "You know, Lena, money doesn't buy class." I sat down slowly. The heat behind my eyes was immediate, but I wouldn't cry. "Not here," he did. "You buy this to impress me," he added, voice low and razor sharp. "Because if you did, that's not how respect works." I opened my mouth to say something, but nothing came out. Not because I didn't have words, but because this wasn't new. This was just another variation of the same performance we'd all been attending for years, except this time, something was different. I remembered the envelope still in my purse, the one I'd almost forgotten. Earlier that week, I'd been at the county clerk's office finalizing paperwork for a real estate investment in Manhattan. While waiting, a clerk had mistakenly handed me a packet meant for Richard Matthews Holdings. Apparently, our names were still linked in some legal database from years ago when I'd briefly considered taking a board observer role in the company. The clerk had apologized and given me my documents, but the wrong packet had accidentally ended up in my folder. I hadn't had time to look at it until this morning. I'd shoved it into my purse, planning to mail it back after the weekend, but now, as the awkward tension hung over the table like fog, I reached for that envelope. I didn't know why, maybe instinct, maybe spite. I opened it and scanned the first page, and froze. To IT wasn't just a routine filing. IT was an amendment to Richard Matthews Holdings' operating agreement, something that named James as the successor to the company. And listed his birth certificate, only, the birth certificate didn't match. James's listed father was someone else. A man named Peter Whitmore. I flipped through more pages. DNA test results. A paternity suit. A sealed settlement agreement dated From over 20 years ago, I looked up at James. At my father. Then back down. The truth slammed into me like a runaway train. James wasn't our father's biological son. I folded the papers slowly, heart hammering so hard I thought it might explode. I didn't know why this revelation shook me so violently. Maybe because, for years, I believed I wasn't good enough compared to James. That I didn't measure up because I lacked something essential. Something that was in his blood, not mine, but that wasn't true. That he wasn't even Richard Matthews's son. Why had I been the one punished? Why was I the one constantly seeking love that never came? Sophia must have noticed the look on my face. Lena, she whispered, her smile falling. I stood slowly, the documents in hand. I need to say something, I announced, my voice cutting through the table's nervous chatter. All eyes turned to me. For years, I've tried to earn your approval, Dad. I've chased it like a drug. Tonight was supposed to be different. I thought maybe if I gave you something extravagant, you'd finally see me. Acknowledge me. Love me. A silence settled like a sheet of ice, but now I understand. It was never about me. It was about control. About needing someone to look down on. And I let you do that. For 32 years. Lena, my mother said quietly, but I raised a hand. No. Let me finish. I placed the documents on the table, sliding them toward James. You might want to read those. Apparently, you're not who you think you are. James opened the folder, his face blanching as he scanned the contents. Father's expression remained stoic, but his jaw clenched. You think this changes anything? He asked coldly. It changes everything, I replied. Not because James is any less valuable, he's still my brother. But because it proves you're a hypocrite. You held me to a standard you couldn't uphold yourself. You lied. You manipulated. You created this hierarchy in our family, all while hiding a truth that would have shattered the illusion. Father stood. You have no right to. I have every right, I snapped. You don't get to shame me anymore. I am not the insecure little girl desperate for your praise. I am a self-made woman. I worked my way up without shortcuts, without lies, without a family name to open doors. My hands trembled, but I didn't back down. I looked around the table, at my mother, who had tears in her eyes. At Sophia, who looked stunned. At James, who now sat silently, reading through the documents again and again. I'm done, Dad, I said, my voice calm now. Done chasing someone who never had the capacity to love me properly. I turned toward the door, keys in hand. Enjoy the car. Or don't. I honestly don't care anymore. I walked out to the driveway, the summer air warm against my skin. The Mercedes gleamed under the moonlight. I paused beside it, running a hand across the hood, then kept walking toward my rental car. Sophia caught up with me before I left. You okay? She asked. For the first time in my life, I said, smiling, I think I am. She nodded. I read those documents. Are you going to do anything with them? I shrugged. That's up to James. I'm not out for revenge. Just peace. And that's what I drove away with that night, not my father's approval, but my own freedom.